The rain came down in sheets, turning the streets of Asheville into a watercolor blur of green and gray. It was late September, the Blue Ridge Mountains half hidden in mist, and I'd just gotten home from a weekend hiking with buddies when I found it. A bookstore receipt tucked inside Sarah's copy of The Great Gatsby. Lying open on our living room coffee table, the receipt wasn't the issue. Sarah was a bookworm, always browsing local shops, but the handwritten note on the back was, "For Sarah. Until next time, M." The book was from Malaprops, dated last Friday, 7:45 p.m., when she'd told me she was at a work happy hour. I'm not the guy who loses his cool over nothing. At 38, I've learned most problems have logical explanations. I'm a financial analyst. I crunch numbers, spot trends, fix leaks before they flood. Sarah and I had been married 7 years. Our life in this artsy mountain town, a cozy mix of craft beer nights, her museum curator job, and my remote spreadsheets. But that note was a red flag, a data point that didn't fit. I slipped the receipt into my pocket, poured a whiskey, and stood by the window, the rain's steady drum mixing with the hum of our old radiator. Maybe it was a friend, I told myself. Maybe a co-worker. But M, and until next time, felt too intimate, too deliberate. Sarah was still at the museum when I got home, her text saying she was prepping for a new exhibit. She'd been staying late a lot lately, her phone buzzing with work emails, her weekends filled with donor meetings. I hadn't thought twice a job was demanding, all about schmoozing art patrons. But now, that receipt was a splinter in my logic. I sat on our worn leather couch, the book's pages soft from her rereading, and flipped to the marked page. A single line was underlined, "You can't repeat the past, ironic or intentional." Sarah came home around 8, her raincoat dripping, her auburn hair frizzed from the damp. "Hey, you're back," she said, smiling as she kicked off her boots. She smelled like coffee and wet wool, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "How was the hike?" "Muddy. Fun. Missed you," I said, keeping it light, the receipt burning a hole in my pocket. "Found something in your book." I held up the receipt, casual as I could. "Who's M?" Her smile didn't drop, but her eyes did a quick glance to the book, then back to me. "Oh, that," she said, laughing softly. "Probably one of the booksellers. They're always leaving little notes. You know Malaprops." She shrugged, moving to the kitchen to pour a glass of wine, but I caught the stiffness in her shoulders, the way her fingers fumbled with the bottle. It was plausible. Sarah was a regular at Malaprops, always chatting up the staff. But a handwritten note? That felt personal. I let it go, or pretended to, and we ate dinner leftover chili, her specialty, while she talked about the exhibit. Her voice bright, but her eyes avoiding mine. The rain kept falling, the windows fogging up, and I couldn't shake the feeling I was being played. The next morning, I started digging. Sarah was at a yoga class, so I had the house to myself. I checked her copy of Gatsby again, no other notes, but the receipt was the only bookmark, like she'd meant to keep it. I moved to her laptop, left open on the dining table. Her password was still our dog's name, a small win. Her emails were mostly work donor lists, exhibit plans, but one thread caught my eye. From M. Caldwell, subject, Friday plans. It was brief, looking forward to 7. Malaprops, then drinks. Her reply, can't wait. Dated last Thursday, the day before the receipt. I googled M. Caldwell. Up popped Miles Caldwell, a 42-year-old art history professor at UNC Asheville, all tweed jackets and soulful headshots. His faculty page listed him as a guest curator, which explained why he'd cross paths with Sarah. His Instagram was public, full of book stacks, gallery openings, and crucially a post from Malaprops last Friday captioned "Evening well spent." Sarah had liked it. My pulse ticked up, but I kept going. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Sarah was passionate, not reckless. She'd spend hours debating art with me, her eyes lit up, her hands flying. But doubt was creeping in like the mist outside. That afternoon, I checked her phone while she was in the shower, feeling like a jerk but too deep to stop. Her texts with Miles were buried in a thread labeled Work Collab, but they weren't about art. "You make evenings better," he'd written. "Only because you're there," she'd replied, with a winky emoji. I set the phone down, the shower's hum, a dull roar in my ears. I needed hard proof, something she couldn't shrug off. On Friday, Sarah said she was meeting a donor at the Admiral, a trendy bar downtown. I didn't buy it. I borrowed my friend's old Jeep, less obvious than my silver Subaru, and followed her. Asheville's streets were slick with rain, the neon signs smearing in the wet, the air sharp with pine and damp earth. She parked near the Admiral, stepped out in a green dress that hugged her curves, and went inside. I waited, parked a block away, my breath fogging the windshield. She didn't come out for 2 hours. When she did, a man was with her tall, tweed blazer, glasses, the kind of academic charm that screamed professor. They didn't touch, but their laughter carried through the rain. Too easy, too close. I snapped a photo, zoomed in, definitely miles from his faculty page. I drove home, the wipers slapping, my anger a low burn in my chest. Back at the house, I got technical. I'm no hacker, but I know data. I installed a tracking app on her phone, hidden in a cloud sync. It showed her at the Admiral again the next Tuesday, then at a coffee shop near the university the following night. I cross-checked her bank app, 60 at the Admiral, 150 at a boutique she hadn't mentioned. New dress, maybe for him. I found a receipt in her coat pocket, crumpled but clear. 2 whiskeys at the Admiral, dated last Friday. Bartender's name, Jenna. I went to the bar the next day, found Jenna, and played the concerned husband. My wife was here, I said, showing Sarah's photo. She okay? Saw her with someone. Jenna nodded, pouring a draft. Yeah, the curator lady? She's in a lot with that professor guy, always laughing. They're close. I tipped her, 20 and left, my hands clenched. I started asking around. Our neighbor, Liz, a painter who knew Sarah from art events, mentioned seeing her with a tweedy guy at a gallery opening a month ago. Thought he was a colleague, she said, pruning her roses. I forced a smile, my jaw tight. Then I called Sarah's co-worker, Ethan, under the pretense of planning a surprise. Ethan was oblivious, chatty. Sarah's been on fire, he said. She's always with that Professor Miles for the exhibit. Total power duo. I thanked him, my whiskey souring. The evidence was stacking up, but it wasn't just about proof. I was spiraling, caught between rage and grief. I kept seeing Sarah's laugh, the one that used to be mine, now aimed at him. I wasn't sleeping. The rain relentless. The radiator's hum a constant nag. Where had I gone wrong? Was I too steady? Too buried in numbers? Sarah loved ideas, lived for the spark of a new project. Maybe Mars was her muse, a fire I couldn't ignite. But that didn't excuse her. It just made me angrier. I got lucky one morning. Sarah left her work tote open, and inside was a gallery flyer for a new exhibit with a handwritten note. Sarah, meet me at 7, usual spot, M. It was dated for next Friday. I tucked it away, my coffee cold, the rain still falling. This wasn't a fling, this was a pattern. The moral weight hit me like a market crash. I could confront her now, blow it all up, but what then? Divorce? Revenge? I didn't want to be the guy who tortures his life, but I couldn't be the one who ignores it, either. Sarah wasn't just cheating, she was rewriting our story, making me the footnote. I was done with that. I started planning, not just to catch her, but to make her see me, the guy she thought she could outmaneuver. The receipt, the flyer, the texts, they were my ledger, and I was balancing it. The Asheville rain hadn't stopped, a relentless grey curtain that turned the Blue Ridge Mountains into ghosts. It was a week since I'd found the bookstore receipt in Sarah's Gatsby, its handwritten note, for Sarah, until next time, Monsieur, igniting my suspicions. I'd built a ledger of her betrayal, flirty texts with Miles Caldwell, the art professor, labelled Work Collab, GPS logs pinning her at the Admiral, a gallery flyer with his note, a bar receipt, and Liz's gossip about her tweedy guy. But evidence wasn't justice. I needed Sarah to face the numbers, to see the husband she'd written off as predictable. I planned the confrontation like a financial forecast, calculated and unyielding. No yelling in our cozy bungalow, no ambushing her over dinner. I chose the Asheville Art Museum, her domain, where she felt untouchable among her exhibits and donors. The flyer had mentioned a Friday opening for her new exhibit, a perfect stage. I told her I'd be crunching numbers late, but suggested meeting her at the museum after to celebrate her big night. "That's sweet," she said, her smile warm but her eyes sharp, like she was scanning for outliers. She didn't know I'd already run the numbers. That morning, I finalized my portfolio. The receipt, the flyer, printed texts, GPS screenshots, Miles's Instagram post from Malaprops, and a photo of them laughing outside the Admiral. I kept the receipt in a plastic sleeve. A touch theatrical but deliberate Sarah lived for aesthetics, and I wanted her to feel the weight of her own narrative. This wasn't just about exposing her. It was about reclaiming the story she'd rewritten. The day dragged, the rain soaking Asheville's cobblestone streets, the air thick with wet pine and regret. I kept auditing our marriage, searching for the deficit. Was it when I got too comfortable, my spreadsheets eating up our evenings? Or when her museum job became her obsession, her world of artists and patrons outshining our quiet nights? Sarah thrived on inspiration, her lectures, her curated displays, her need to chase the next big idea. Miles, with his tweed and theories, was probably her spark, a muse I couldn't match. That didn't justify her. It just made me question what I'd overlooked. I dug deeper into Miles, needing to know the man who'd unbalanced my equation. His university page was academic flex, guest lectures, published papers, a book on modernist art. His Twitter showed us softer side quotes from Rilke, photos of foggy mountains, and, tellingly, a post from the Admiral, tagged with Sarah's handle, captioned "Kindred Spirits," dated 3 weeks ago. Kindred, my ass. I saved it, my jaw tight, and checked his LinkedIn. No wife, no kids, just a trail of guest curator gigs. A free agent, not a home wrecker, just a guy who saw a chance and took it. I called Sarah's co-worker Ethan again, playing the proud husband planning a toast. Ethan was looser this time, maybe because it was Friday. "Sarah's killing it," he said. "She and Miles are like art, world rock stars, always together." I thanked him, my whiskey glass sweating in my hand. Rock stars, another data point in the red. By afternoon, I was wired, pacing our living room, the radiator hissing like it knew my secret. The moral dilemma was a market crash in my head. Confronting her would balance the books, but what came next? Divorce was the cleanest exit, but did I want to liquidate 7 years over an affair? System. I notice you're requesting the continuation of a story about a man's discovery of his wife's infidelity, set in Asheville with a financial analyst protagonist. You've previously shown a strong interest in betrayal narratives with ironic, resilient male narrators who uncover their wife's affairs through methodical investigations, often using modern elements like social media and GPS tracking. April 4, 2025. You also emphasized unique clues, vivid settings, and moral dilemmas, with confrontations that avoid cliches and stay within YouTube guidelines. Based on this, I'll continue the story, ensuring it aligns with your preferences for drama, irony, and a strong protagonist, while keeping the Asheville setting immersive and the confrontation sharp. If you want any tweaks, e.g., a different tone or specific details, let me know. I arrived at the Asheville Art Museum early, the glass facade reflecting the sodden city in smears of neon and grey. Inside, the place was alive, polished wood floors, abstract sculptures, and the hum of art world chatter under soft jazz. The exhibit opening was in full swing, patrons in scarves and blazers, sipping Prosecco, orbiting Sarah's latest triumph. I wore a tailored jacket, blending in but feeling like an auditor at a gala, my portfolio of evidence tucked in a sleek leather folder. I found a spot near a kinetic sculpture, its metal arms spinning in futile circles, and waited. Sarah swept in at 7:30, radiant in a burgundy dress, her auburn hair pinned up, a glass of white wine in hand. She worked the room like a conductor, all smiles and practiced charm, shaking hands with donors, her laugh cutting through the jazz. I watched her, my chest tight, remembering the woman who'd read Gatsby aloud to me on our porch, her voice soft as the mountain breeze. Now she was a stranger, curating a life I wasn't part of. Then I saw him, Miles, in a predictable tweed blazer, lingering by a painting, his eyes tracking her. Their glances met, a silent contract, and my blood ran hot. I waited, letting her think she was in control. She spotted me near the sculpture, waved, and glided over, her smile a masterpiece of composure. "You made it," she said, kissing my cheek, her perfume sharp with jasmine. "This exhibit's my baby. Glad you're here." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice steady. "Found something in your book." I slid the receipt from my folder, held it low so only she could see. Her smile froze, her eyes flicking to the note, "For Sarah. Until next time. M," like it was a misfiled artifact. "What's this?" she said, her voice tight, still playing the curator. "Nate, you kept that? It's just a bookseller's note." "Is it?" I set the flyer down, Miles's handwriting bold. "Then there's this." I opened the folder, spreading the texts, GPS logs, receipt, and his Instagram post, like a losing hand. Her face didn't crack, but her hand trembled, the wine sloshing in her glass. "Nate, this is ridiculous," she hissed, her eyes darting to the crowd to ensure no one noticed. "You're snooping through my life? That's low, even for you." "Low?" I leaned in, my voice low, sharp. "Low's lying about happy hours while you're sneaking off with Miles Caldwell, the Admiral, every Friday. I've got your texts, your GPS. Even Liz saw you with him. Want to tell me it's all curating?" Her jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought she'd storm off, but she stayed, her eyes blazing like a cornered artist. "You're twisting this," she said. "Miles is a colleague, a collaborator. You're too buried in your spreadsheets to understand my world." "Collaborator?" I laughed, cold and bitter. "You're texting him heart emojis, meeting him in secret, laughing like I don't exist. What is it, Sarah? His lectures? His kindred spirit vibe? Or just the thrill of rewriting our marriage?" She flinched, but she didn't break. "You don't get it," she said. "You're so stable. Miles gets me, my passion. This," she gestured at the folder, "is nothing. It's not what you think." "Nothing?" I tapped the flyer. "You're in deep. And I've got the audit trail. Keep spinning, Sarah. It's almost art." A donor hovered nearby, sensing the tension, but I waved them off with a tight smile. Sarah sipped her wine, her eyes locked on mine, calculating. "What do you want?" she said finally. "To humiliate me? Ruin my career? Go ahead, Nate. You're not as perfect as you think." "I want the truth," I said. "No curation, no charm. You owe me that." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "Fine. Yes, I've been with him. It's not love, it's inspiration. You wouldn't understand." Inspiration. The word hit like a bad forecast, but I didn't waver. I'd balanced the books, forced her to show her hand, but it didn't feel like a clean ledger. It felt like a loss I couldn't quantify. We stood there, the jazz swelling, the museum's lights too bright, like they were spotlighting our unraveling. I could have walked away, left her with the folder and her donors. But part of me needed more, not an apology, but a why. Was it really inspiration, like she said? Or was she chasing a spark I'd let dim? I thought about our early Daisha dragging me to poetry slams, her laugh when I overanalyzed a painting. Where had that Sarah gone? "You could have told me," I said. "Quieter now. If you needed inspiration, you didn't have to erase me." She looked away, her fingers tightening on her glass. "You wouldn't have listened," she said. "You're always so practical." It stung, because there was a grain of truth there. I'd been distracted, my life, a grid of numbers and routine. But that didn't justify her. Nothing did. I closed the folder, slid it back into my bag. "Keep your inspiration," I said, "but don't expect me to fund it." I turned and walked out, the museum's glass doors hissing shut behind me. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, the mountain air sharp and clean. I could ruin her, send the text to her board, derail her exhibit. Or I could let her go, recalculate, build a life that didn't hinge on her lies. The receipt was still in my pocket, a small weight against the chaos ahead. I kept walking, Asheville's neon signs flickering, and felt the first hint of a new projection, not closure, but clarity.